supply.
Didn't Mexico decriminalize a lot of drugs like fairly recently?
Yeah, so they had a big Supreme Court decision. I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and I think about this time I spent in Mexico really often, because it was. I mean, I've been to a lot of bad places. I covered the war in the Congo. I've been to Iraq. I've been to Gaza. I've never seen anything like what happened in Juarez when I was there. And I think it's worth explaining. So when you, like I was saying, when you ban drugs, they don't disappear, right? They transfer to armed criminal gangs. If you live in a housing project in the United States where 5% of the economy of that housing project is in the hands of armed criminal gangs, that's going to be a shitty, frightening place to be, right? A place like Ciudad Juarez, which is on the border with Mexican side of the United States border with, it's the other side with El Paso. By the time I went there, it was 70% of the economy was in the hands of these armed criminal gangs, right? So I remember going to see this guy, Rosalio Reta. I interviewed people about him in Juarez, but then he's in prison in the United States, he's in Tyler County. And Rosalio is an interesting guy. So he butchered or beheaded about 70 people between the ages of 13 and 17. I remember going into the prison actually to see him, and the guard said to me on the way in, well, obviously I can't leave you alone with him because he's like butchered all these people. I was like, oh, great, thanks. And I remember about 5 minutes in, turned around, the guard was fucking gone. But so sitting with Rosalio, talking about his life and his story. So Rosalio grew up in Laredo. It's on Texas side of the border. It's basically the same place as Nuevo Laredo on the Mexican side. It was very easy to cross the border at that time. So he was growing up in the late 90s, noughties. I mean, Rosalio was 13. So the Zetas were a kind of famous drug gang at that time. They still are. Drug cartel. How the Zetas were created is an insane story every taxpayer should know. The US government decided to train an elite anti-drug force for the Mexican government, right? Like kind of Navy SEALs for the anti-drug force. They take them to Fort Bragg. They spent something like $250 million training them up. They go back to Mexico. 6 months later, they all defected en masse, almost all of them, and created a drug cartel, the Zetas. Great use of your tax money. So the Zetas were this kind of glamorous, in inverted commas, drug gang, right, operating on that part of the border. Drug routes move around according to where they put policing. It always gets through, but it moves around. They call it the balloon effect. Imagine a balloon half full of air. You push down one pace, the air comes up somewhere else. But at that time, it was going through Juarez and El Paso and Laredo and Nuevo Laredo. And Rosalio... So there's two stories about how Rosalio gets involved with the Zetas. What Rosalio says is he was basically kidnapped by them and forced to start killing people. I don't think that's true. If you look at the evidence, it's that he sort of volunteered, but he's 13, so I don't hold him morally responsible for that. But either way, there's one night, it all begins. He's taken on the Mexican side of the border to a warehouse where they are torturing people, burning them alive. He's given a gun by a guy called Miguel Trevino, who later became the head of the Zetas. And he's told to shoot someone in the head, and that's the moment you're in. And when you're in with the Zetas, you never get out, right? No one leaves. No one leaves alive. And so they begin to train him. In 2005, he's sent to a summer camp that's literally a camp that teaches you how to behead people and do all sorts of things. And he's then sent, him and his friends are then sent to murder people. With his friends Jesse and Gabriel, they murder huge numbers of people. That they were called within the Zetas call these child soldiers the expendables, because they don't give a shit if they live or die, right? They, as one person said to me, they prefer children because they don't understand death so well, right? Obviously, as Rosalio got a bit older, he understood death better. All his friends get murdered. Eventually, he tries to get back to the US. He cooperates. He now lives in solitary confinement, where he will live for the rest of his life, because when they let him out of solitary, shortly before I met him, he was immediately stabbed in the neck. And again, you think about this insane violence that we created, right? When I went to Juarez, it's this bizarre thing. So that time, you were told it wasn't, quite rightly, it wasn't safe to stay in Juarez overnight. So I would stay overnight in El Paso, and I'd walk across the bridge, right? Through obviously you have to show your passport. I remember the customs people going, why the fuck are you going into Juarez? But going there, and it's weird, on the other side of the bridge, there's this sign, and it says, welcome to historic downtown Juarez. And it used to be a tourist site. Billie Holiday got married there. But now it's just, at that time, it was just covered with images of missing women. Just everywhere, because this is another really important part of what this violence does. And I think it's really important we understand this is the violence caused by the system that we uphold and we imposed on Mexico. Mexicans do not want this, right? So there's another story. I think this was, of all the stories I wrote about for Chasing the Scream, along with one other one I can tell you about if you want, this was the hardest. So a woman in Juarez, when the drug war violence starts to go through, called Marisela Escobedo. She was a nurse, but Marisela was incredibly hardworking. So she also would do these, what would you call them, like wood carvings, basically, and she would sell them in the market on Saturdays and Sundays. She had 3 kids. Her youngest daughter was called Ruby. She was 14 at the time. And they would work on this stall in the marketplace every Saturday. I think maybe even Sundays as well, some Sundays. And one day a guy comes up to Marisela at her stall called Sergio, who was a young guy. He was like 21. And he's like, he's just had a baby, he needs a job. Marisela was kind of soft-hearted. She gives him a job working on her market stall. And a few months later, she discovers to her horror that he's having sex with her 14-year-old daughter, Ruby. And she's like, fires him immediately and goes to the police and says, you need to go and question him, right? He's 21, she's 14. This is a crime. Police don't do anything. She doesn't understand it. Why are they not investigating this? Her daughter starts running away to be with Sergio. Marisela keeps going to get her back. She keeps going to the police saying, this is a crime. He can't live with a 14-year-old. Go and arrest him. They won't do anything. Right? She's completely puzzled by this. Then Ruby gets pregnant. Marisela's like, she was 15 by then. She's like, fuck, I've got to keep her in my life. So she keeps going to see Ruby. By this time, she's kind of accepted the police aren't, with real rage, that the police aren't going to do anything. And then one day, just after the baby was born, she goes to see Ruby. And Sergio's there with the baby. And he says, oh, Ruby has run away with another man. She's gone. She's not coming back. And Marisela's like, what, and left her baby? No, she hasn't done that. I know she hasn't done that. I know my daughter. He's like, well, she's gone. So Marisela waits. Christmas comes, no message. New Year comes, no message. She starts to go to the neighborhood and hand out leaflets with pictures of her daughter. Loads of women are going missing in Juarez at this time. I'll tell you why in a minute. Just saying, have you seen this girl? And after a few days, she gets a call from a kid called Angel, who says, I'm really frightened to tell you something. If you drive me out into the desert, I'll tell you. So she drives Angel out into the desert. I think he was 14. And he says, Sergio murdered your daughter and he made me help him dispose of the body. And he told Marisela where the body was. It was actually a place where they dumped pig carcasses from the abattoir. So she goes and she finds the body with her son. And she goes to the police, and the police finally do something and they arrest Sergio. Sergio's put on trial. In the witness box, he breaks down, admits he did it, and apologises to Marisela. And then a few weeks later, he's acquitted of all charges and disappears. And Marisela's like, what the fuck is going on here? So she starts to look into this, and she discovers, and this is where it intersects with the drug war in a really important way, that Sergio was a member of the Zetas, right? Now, if you're a member of the Zetas at that time in Juarez, it's different now because another drug gang has displaced them, you own the state, right? You have, if they control 70% of the economy, you have more money than the government, right? So the police worked for them. When I went to go interview Rosalio, he said, when I would go and murder people, the police would come with me. They would dispose of the body, right? I remember...
Jesus Christ. And what year are we talking about?
This is like 6 years ago. I remember I remember, it's interesting because one of the things when you're in a dangerous place, when you're in a dangerous place, one of the things you do is you read danger from how frightened the people around you are, right? Because you don't know the place. I was there with Julian Cardona, who was my fixer, who's he's the Reuters correspondent in Juarez, one of the bravest people I've ever met. But it was realizing how frightened other people were for me and Julian, right? And I remember after I'd been there for a few days, Julian kept introducing me. By that time, the killings were basically all being done by the police. And I was saying, Julian, this is important that I meet people who've been killed by the police, but I should also meet people who've been killed by the cartels more recently. And he said, he just laughed and said, no, that's not how it works, Johan. Now, if the cartels want to kill someone, they just pay the police to do it, right? So it's this real realization. All right, if someone comes for you, there is nowhere for you to go, right? So Marisela refuses to accept that she lives in a country where there is no justice. She decides, okay, they're not going to solve this. I'm going to solve this. She appealed. Loads of women are missing because it turns out if a bunch of criminals control the state, they will just murder loads of women and get away with it, right? There are some men who just want to murder women, and if they give them license to do it, they'll do it. That's why so many women were missing. Maricela gathers a load of those mothers. She says some of them don't know where their daughters are, some of them know their daughters are dead. She's like, I need your help. We're going to find this guy who's done this, right? So Maricela turns herself with these women into a detective. She starts tracking Sergio all over Mexico, wherever there are sightings. She walks everywhere. She walks over 1,000 miles, right? She walks through the desert. It becomes a media phenomenon. People follow her. She's like this symbol of the loss that's happened in Mexico. And incredibly, with her friend Berta Alicia Garcia, who I got to know later, after 2 years, she finds Sergio. She tracks him down. She goes to the police. She tells them where he is. They tip him off and he disappears. And she's devastated. So she decides she's going to go to the governor's mansion in Chihuahua, which is the state capital. She goes there and she sets up tent outside the governor's mansion. And she's like, I'm not leaving here until you people go and find this man. And she calls on every mother who has a daughter who's missing or who they're afraid of to come and join her in this fight, right? And it gets to Christmas Eve and she's preparing to, just before Christmas, she says on Christmas Eve, I'm going to have this big Christmas dinner here, people can join me. She gives this great speech and a man walks up to her and shoots her in the head in front of all the police, everyone.
Yeah, I moved to New York with $400 and I got bed bugs the first year. Landlord died of AIDS.
Whoa.
And I got mugged 3 times in the first year.
Oh, my God.
It was hell, man.
Mugged at like what? Knife point? Gun point?
Well, it was mostly my fault. I'm victim blaming here, but I was always such a blackout drunk that I was just like asking to be mugged.
Oh.
I would fall asleep and wake up, and guys were going through my shit. One time I fell asleep on Hell's Kitchen. Remember the bar Rudy's?
No.
You got a free hot dog with every beer, so it was a hot spot. But I remember being so drunk, they threw me out, and I was walking down 9th Avenue, and I was like, I just got to lay down for a minute. I'm so tired. Because I had to go, when you had that haul to Brooklyn on the subway, that would take 2-3 hours sometimes.
Really?
Oh, yeah, at 4 in the morning, yeah.
2-3 hours?
Because the trains change, and they never show up, and, and then the garbage train comes. It takes forever. And I lived in Crown Heights, man, which is, like, way out. So, I fell asleep in this little alcove, and I woke up, and 4 or 5 guys are going through my shit. They're blockbusting. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I was like, what? And he goes, he's getting up. And he hit me, and I went out again. And they took my keys, my phone, my joke book, my wallet. And starting from scratch with no money, you got to somehow get a Metro card, but you have no wallet to get the Metro card. You got no credit card to get the wallet. I mean, it's brutal.
How'd you get by? What'd you do?
I just had to walk home, which took forever, and then I think I jumped the turnstiles, got home, and then you find your roommate, you call your mom, and she helps you.
Wow.
I fell asleep. Oh, this is a crazy story. I fell asleep on the subway. I went like 4 stops past mine in Brooklyn. I got out and I was like, I'll walk it. It's a nice night. I see 5 guys in the corner, right out of Central Casting, shooting dice, thugged out guys on the corner, drinking 40s. And I go, I'm going to cross the street. These guys look a little shady. And I walk across the street, and now an older guy's coming to her, white beard, big, older black guy. And he gets up to me, and I had an old iPod. He goes, give me that radio. And I go, it's not a radio. Thinking that would, turn him away. And he goes, just give it to me. And I go, I don't think so. And he grabs at it, so I grab at it. Now we're tugging, and he picks me up, and he's slamming me against a business, when the metal gate closes, that pow, pow. And I'm kicking him, I'm punching him, and I think he was on PCP or something. And before I know it, those 5 guys run over and just beat the shit out of him. I'm talking, he hits the ground, they're kicking him in the face, and I'm just like, and I grab my iPod and I get out of there.
So those 5 guys helped you?
They saved my life, yeah.
Holy shit.
I talked to a cop about it like a month later, and he was like, oh, those were drug dealers, and they can't have some white kid getting killed in the neighborhood, so they had to make a choice. And I was like, wow, thank God for drugs. You can't judge. I'd totally judge those guys.
My main objective and everything I've been embarking on and been involving myself with, it's all been because of a fresh start. I feel fresh. I feel new. I feel that nothing can stop me. Nothing can be in my way. And it's just an awesome feeling.
So this is from doing that one DMT experience just sent you into.
Well, I did it one time, but I did it many times that day.
Right.
But yeah, this really I don't know what it is. I'm trying to figure it out, but I've changed. But I just don't know how.
Yeah. I describe it for a lot of people, it's like resetting a computer. You reset a computer, you have a fresh new desktop. And there's only one folder on the desktop, and that folder says my old bullshit.
This is listen, stop. I'm saying to myself right now, sometimes I wonder, this new feeling that I'm possessing right now, is it a real feeling? Does this stuff really help? Or am I lying to myself again till the next moment, that next feeling come to do some drugs, to be with somebody else? What's really going on? Is that feeling going to come back? Because at this moment, it's that feeling feel like it's never coming back.
It can never come back if you decide that it's never coming back. But you have to make that decision pretty much every day. But you can never come back if you want. Or you could slip into the old ways. That's what a lot of people do. When a lot of people fall into drug addictions, relapsing, when they relapse, they're not physically addicted when they're relapsed. Obviously, they're clean. And then they decide to go back in. It's because there's comfort in those old patterns. Because this new way of life is just, they get anxiety. They feel like it's a lot of pressure to stay clean.
Oh, so explain it. I hate that. I always hated that. Oh, wait, I never wanted to do drugs, but then I do them again. I never wanted. I hate it. No.
Yeah.
No, come on. You understand what I'm saying? No, I don't want.
Yeah.
Fuck, I don't want that.
Next
and then once you do that, then you're going all out now. You got the liquor there, the girl. Oh, man, this is just a dark, vicious cycle. It's real dark.
Yeah, it's self-destructive.
Real dark, yeah. It's all about ego inflating and self-deprecating, self-destruction.
It also alleviates you from the responsibility of improving.
100%.
That pressure of like keeping it together, staying sober, being disciplined, all that stuff. Once it's gone, it's gone. Like, I'm just fucking crazy. I'm crazy. This is just what I do. I'm crazy. And it's easy to fall into that trap, and that's what happens to a lot of people who relapse with drugs.
I never want to go back to that again. That's just a no-win situation.
That's one of the great things about marijuana that people don't understand. They think that a drug is a drug is a drug. They're all falling under the same category. But you can use marijuana and just be peaceful and not chaotic, and the opposite. It'll make you think more about the consequences of ruining your life. But it had to be really odd to be working that much and be a young girl.
The balance it trained me to have is something that I don't think you are going to get taught any other way besides jumping in the deep end of the pool and hoping you know how to swim. That's the only way. There was no way I could have prepared for the amount of balance I would have to learn to kind of teeter, because, at one point, again, it went from, it was school, then it went from, how much weed can I actually smoke and still play a teenage superstar on the Disney Channel? and then like
What's the answer to that question?
More than you would fucking think. I remember one time and I don't smoke anymore, and I'm sober.
How long have you been sober
but
for?
I've been sober since pretty much the vocal surgery kind of did it for me, because I just learned so much about the effects, which, again, you're just not taught. It's not really the drinking, it's staying up all night. Once you have your drink, you end up smoking. And I've become the face of a lot of things, kind of against my will, I guess, from my opinions. When you're someone in my position, your opinion becomes your identity, and it also becomes kind of almost like you kind of become this like preacher. You become this, they don't really let you just always have your own opinion. So I've decided to start telling people, I live my own lifestyle. Alcohol was never my problem. There was other things that I end up, I like to go up. So I now just avoid really drinking, because I like to wake up at 110%. But it's never really been my problem, and I could see myself having a drink of celebration in the future. But I get so fucking hungover now that I'm like, why would I celebrate with like just feeling like a volcano's erupted in my brain, So it's really just a personal preference, but it's definitely not anything that I promote in. I think it's a lifestyle I think everyone should experiment. It's a good time, and you learn a lot of things about yourself and the people around you. But now I'm watching, I have younger siblings, and they're going through that, and I don't know how my mom did it with me, because it's scary.
Yeah, I think if we're going to acknowledge the fact that all these things exist, cocaine exists, pills exist, marijuana exists, we should teach people how to do it right.
Yeah.
You're leaving children. It's the same thing with sex, right?
Yeah.
We leave children to there's the information that they're going to get is from other kids.
Yeah.
And if you're learning about sex from another 14-year-old or you're learning about coke from a 14-year-old, that's not good.
Yeah.
Like we play this game with children where we try to pretend that, they live in a movie.
All right, well, listen to this. It's actually funny you bring this up because I had the idea this week, not that I really have time to do this in the near future, but I would like to at some point in my life. I want to do my own children's book series of realistic children's stories. Because I don't like the idea that we teach them that this is sunshine world and everyone walks on a rainbow and everyone's equal, and you need to say, like, that's not. What are you going to do about it? That's not true. What are you going to do about it? And I think there's a way to not terrify children of life, even though I go in and out of periods where I think life is really overwhelmingly terrifying. And that's coming from my position. And my position, I tell myself all the time, if you're not enjoying this life, honey, you got it coming in the next one, because I better fucking love this life. It's the best one. I couldn't imagine being in a different body and having a different experience.
It's an awesome life if you do it the right way.
It's an awesome life. And I didn't hurt myself beyond repair in my experiences. I survived, and I don't even mean heart still beating survival. I mean, I have a lot of people that love me around. I didn't kick all the people that had my best interest at heart out. That's where you die. Is you kick everyone that says, "Hey, are you okay?" Out. No, of course I'm okay. You don't trust me, get the fuck out.
Right.
And so now that I have people that I've had in my life, I feel that I have people in my life that I've known for 15, 20 years, and not many people in my position get to say that. My parents are awesome. My dad's loopy as hell, but I love him so much.
How did you wind up living in Mexico City?
So I came to Mexico, or went to Mexico in the year 2000. And I kind of messed around for a few years in the UK. Wanted to get into journalism. So I found one way to get into it was to start working in a foreign country. Rather than going to my local newspaper and work, and go to a foreign country and start working. And I had a romantic idea about Latin America, thinking I'd be like, I saw the movie Salvador, Oliver Stone's movie from the 80s. I kind of had a romantic idea about running around with guerrillas, fighting military dictatorships. So I arrived in Mexico in 2000 and got a job at an English language newspaper.
How old were you?
27 when I first left the UK, 28 when I messed around for a bit in Mexico as well, and then got the job when I was 28.
Mexico City's a wild place.
Yeah.
It's so packed. It's hard to. I've only been there twice for UFC events.
Yeah.
But every time I'm there, I'm just shaking my head like, I can't believe how this traffic works. It's crazy.
Yeah, 18 years, and I've spent a lot of time in that traffic.
Nobody cares about red lights, green lights. They don't care.
It's stressful. Everyone wants to cut you up all the time.
Yeah.
People shout at you a lot. You have to get used to people calling you like pendejo, cerdo. I tried different tactics. Now I just try and relax and not get angry.
Did you know how to speak Spanish before you went there?
Yeah. So I spent 1 year in Spain, living in Spain before I went there. I spent a year in the Middle East as well. But yeah, I started off when I arrived, I spoke more to Spanish, which is like, oye, tío, coño, tío. And then I changed more to like the Mexican Spanish, which is like, oye, güey, ¿qué pasó, güey?
Right. Yeah. So when did you start getting into narco journalism?
So, like, I arrived, say, with a romantic idea about what I might cover in Mexico or Latin America. And right away I realized all that idea of guerrillas and military dictatorships that had gone. That was the last century. Che Guevara, all that stuff had gone. But right away when I arrived, when I very first arrived, back in the UK, I grew up around a lot of drugs in the UK. So going back to the 80s, I grew up with a lot of people taking drugs. I had a few friends who died from heroin overdoses back then. 4 people I knew died of heroin overdoses. I had a sister who became schizophrenic, smoking a lot of. She became schizophrenic, and there'd be a lot of drugs being smoked around that time as well.
Was it pot?
Yeah, back then it was Moroccan hashish.
There is a connection. And we've been exploring that a lot lately. We went into this marijuana debate between Alex Berenstein and Dr. Mike Hart from Canada, and we talked about it. And I know people that have had that happen to them, where they've had schizophrenic or psychotic breaks because of just massive doses of marijuana, and especially people that don't do it, or people that do it too much for too long. It does happen.
I heard that debate. That's one
Yeah.
of the reasons why it came to mind. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people smoke weed, smoke hash.
A lot of people, it's fine.
Now, when my sister had a breakdown when she was 18 and I was 16 at the time, and when that came out, it turned out also my grandmother had an issue with schizophrenia.
Right.
And I don't know if it was a time bomb waiting to go off,
Yeah.
or if it was how much the hash was involved in that. There's other issues as well. So I don't really know the science of it, but anyway, going back, so I've been around a lot of drugs before. So when I arrived in Mexico, actually, one of the first arriving in Mexico, I ended up hanging around with some people, and they were smoking a lot of crack in Mexico. It's some of the first people I met.
Wow.
I went down to the beach, like backpacking down to the beach, and these people were smoking crack, and I was like, this is kind of strange. I didn't know there's people smoking crack down here. So when I got a job at the local newspaper in English, and I just started looking at the crime thing, one of the first stories I did was on the issue of crack being sold locally and how that linked to cartels. And then very soon, just very, very quickly, I just fell in right away. Like I said, all these things happen by accident. I just fell into covering the crime beat. And this is going back to 2001. So 2001, that was the same year that Chapo Guzman escaped from prison. Then I was calling a lot then to a great journalist from Tijuana, Jesus Blanconelas, a real legend from Tijuana, who survived the shooting by cartels. And phoning him up all the time, just getting him to give me information, give me tips. And that was how it really started. Another big story I did back in those days was the court-martial of some generals for drug trafficking. And that was really where it began back then.
Generals for drug trafficking. How much of an issue is that? I mean, corruption must be unbelievably rampant.
So, I mean, corruption even isn't a strong enough word for it. Sometimes I call it state capture. I mean, so this is the real beginning, and this has been a whole crazy 18 years of covering this stuff. I mean, this was just the very beginning back then. I've seen a whole lot of very crazy stuff in that time. But like, just to get a sense of how bad the corruption is, or what it really means on the ground level there. Like, there's policemen. Like, you interview policemen, you get to know the policemen in a certain town, certain city. And it's hard to know, or military guys or politicians, and you want to believe these are good people. You want to believe there's good policemen out there who really want to stop crime. So there was one policeman. His nickname was Tyson, like Mike Tyson. His nickname was Tyson because he was a well-built bloke, well-built guy. And he was friendly with the press, a guy from Michoacan, friendly with the press. And then it came out that he was actually a drug cartel member, a ranking member in the drug cartel. And he actually confessed. They used to have a thing where the police, the federal police, when they got him to confess on camera. And he confessed not only was he turning a blind eye, not only was he carrying out murders, he was training the young kids how to decapitate people, how to cut people up. And he was explaining in graphic detail how he'd how they managed to cut limbs off, how he gets young people to train them to cut limbs off, to get them to lose their fear. So that's the level of corruption. That could be a policeman you're dealing with, and that's really who they are. So that's one of the crazy things about the corruption down there.
Did you have any hesitancy in getting involved in narco journalism knowing this? I mean, I would imagine that's one of the most dangerous avenues to pursue in journalism.
So this was little by little I got involved in covering this. So like going back to 2000, this hadn't happened. This war hadn't happened. It was still like a crime issue at that moment. So I began to cover these things, and then around 2004, I got a job for the Houston Chronicle out of Houston, Texas. I was a stringer covering Mexico for them. And I flew up to Nuevo Laredo, and there was a turf war beginning there, which is really the beginning of the drug war, which has torn Mexico apart. Began on the border with Texas in this city called Nuevo Laredo, over the bridge from Laredo, Texas, back in 2004. So there was a lot of interest from the Texas newspapers, what was going on. There's a whole bunch of bodies piling up there. But again, this going back to these days, and this is kind of innocent looking at myself then, and innocent looking at what Mexico was like then. They would simply say, go to the place, I'd drive up to Monterrey, rent a car, and just drive the car to Nuevo Laredo. just by myself. And now people just don't do that. There's just too much crazy stuff going on. But back then it was still like, oh, you can just do that. So there was
When you say crazy stuff, like what kind of crazy stuff?
I mean, now you can get stopped by an armed group driving on those roads. You could just drive along, and there could be a group of guys with guns could stop the car, get someone out, take you away. I mean, there's a whole. People are a lot more careful about where you now when you move around the roads, you got to be very careful how you move and how you plan this stuff. You don't just wander by yourself, drive around these places. So back then when this was happening, and there was these bodies turning up, and I was trying to figure out why. And there was one guy interviewed who was the head of Chamber of Commerce, and I talked to him. A very interesting guy. About a couple of weeks later, he became the chief of police for the city. And they asked him, they said, are you scared? You scared about being killed? And he said, no, I'm not scared. It's only the corrupt people who get killed. And he was shot dead 6 hours after he gave that statement. They shot him dead. And that was one of the real markers of something really strange is going on in Mexico. Something is like going to erupt in Mexico. And then from there, it kind of just escalated and escalated. And I started working for other media, Time Magazine, New York Times, different people. And after a while, I said, I can't do this. I can't just write news stories about this. I've got to write books about this because this stuff is big and it's complicated.
It must be immensely complicated. For the people that live there, it seems like there's no escape. I mean, if you can't turn to the police are the cartel. There's the cartel, the police. All of the politicians, most likely, if they're alive, have to be compromised?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some very, very desperate people, and I mean, there's been some inspirational people as well fighting this. There's been heroes. There are heroes. Just to get more of a sense of what that means on the ground as well, and some of the things you see. Some of the things that stay with me. For a while, it was quite romantic covering this. It was like, wow, I'm going to these places where Chapo Guzman is from. I go up to the village and meet his mother and meet his family. I'm writing about these crazy people. But then you start seeing the human pain in all of this. One of many stories that stick with me was a mother in Monterrey, a school teacher. When you have armed guys moving around, they're also really affecting the civil population, attacking the civil population. And one mother, she was in her home with her 2 children in Monterrey. And it was like in the night just chilling in their house. And then the door broke down. And about 15 guys in bulletproof jackets all came in, long arms, just taking stuff from the house. Held the family, pinned them down. And they said to the mother, which of your children is the oldest? And she was like, didn't know how to reply. I mean, which of your children are the oldest? How do I reply to that? She just couldn't speak. And the eldest son, she had 2 sons, one 18, one 15. The 18-year-old was a philosophy student. And he said, I'm the oldest. I said, okay, you're coming with us. And took him away. And the next day she got a phone call saying, okay, we got your son, give us this amount of money, we'll give him back. So she went round to relatives, just got the money. She wanted to get the money right away. She turned up with the money, gave some money, and then they just cut off the calls. She hadn't heard from him since. And I mean, seeing her face, the devastation, the pain, she said, just couldn't go on with life after that, and just not knowing, not having the closure. And I met her when I went to report on one of the worst atrocities, which was 49 bodies who had all been decapitated, all had their hands and feet cut off, and all been dumped on a road. And they were taken to the morgue in Monterrey, and I arrived at the morgue. I was inside the morgue just smelling the smell of the dead bodies, this kind of weird smell you get from decaying flesh, kind of like a sweet smell you get from when you're around those places where you can smell the bodies decaying. And I was inside the morgue, and I came out, and she was outside the morgue. And she was trying to see if her son might be among those people, among those bodies.
Wow. It's so insane that this is right next door to America, and there's so little effort put on doing something about it, including doing something to mitigate the influence of illegal drugs by making drugs legal. I mean, that would be one gigantic step. You're not going to stop people from doing drugs. I mean, this is an illogical, ridiculous approach. I don't think people should do most of those drugs. But when you make drugs illegal, only criminals are going to sell those drugs. And this is exactly what you have right next door to America. I mean, it's just unbelievably insane that there's this amount of crime a drive away from San Antonio. You're writing about a movie, or you're writing about a guy like Tony Montana. How do you you walk this fine line of telling the story accurately, but actually making him likable in some strange way?
Well, he's not a hypocrite, you see. He tells the truth, as he says, even when I lie. He's a man who's free unto himself, and I think that's what worked, because the people around him are so corrupt. I mean, the cops are corrupt in Miami. The system, the bureaucracy that pressed down on. By the way, I mean, let's be honest. Let's talk about the drug war. I mean, this is an invention that's come about that's a disaster. It's a bureaucracy of enormous billions of dollars are being wasted on fighting drugs with this super DEA and now they ICE and all that, whatever they want. We always create wars. We call it war on drugs, war on poverty, war on this, war on that. That's the problem. We make too much of a bureaucracy. I noticed this in Vietnam. It bothered the shit out of me because we were sending 5 people, non-combat people over there for every combat person. We had an infrastructure, Las Vegas of material. We had PXs. We had everything we wanted. They sent cars over there. A lot of this stuff was, sold on the black market in the end by master sergeants making a buck on the side. There was a lot of shit going on, crime stuff, and the Vietnamese were benefiting from it. They loved the Americans, of course. They loved us. It's the same thing, Afghanistan, Iran. It goes on and on and on. It's like we create these super bureaucracies around events. So what happened in the war on drugs is the same thing, and that I think that Pacino's a hero because, in a way, he sees it all. He sees it's all bullshit, and he calls it out. And I think a lot of people just picked up on it. They knew the war on drugs was a lie.
Yeah, well, most people today at least have a sense that it's not going well. I mean, back then they thought.
How many countries have we pissed off? How many countries have we told, "Hey, you got to do it this way. We're coming down there. We're going to bust you."
Speaking of Geraldo, did you ever see the footage where Geraldo was in Afghanistan and he's walking through the poppy fields that are being protected by U.S. troops?
Yeah, sure.
And it's on Fox News, so he's trying to do this weird propaganda job of explaining why, in order to get these poppy farmers to give us information about the Taliban, we have to somehow or another protect their crops. So you've got American soldiers.
It's a crazy story.
Well, then you find out that spectacular growth of heroin.
Yeah.
Like heroin sales and heroin use worldwide went up in an amazing manner.
Yeah. This was going on, by the way, in the 1980s when we were supporting the Mujahideen against the Russians.
Yeah,
that's when it started. They were fighting for the poppy fields.
Yeah,
we're talking about billions of dollars here.
Billions. Yeah, and it's not like
some of these drug dealers, we don't even know their names, but they're well known in the Pakistani, Afghani world.
Yeah.
Some of them are unbelievably rich.
But it's so transparent. The poppy fields being guarded by U.S. troops, and
that's a new one.
And them talking about it openly on Fox News, and don't worry, folks, this is why they have to do this.
Ugh.
Like it's one of the weirdest parts of the war.
Yeah, as was Dan Rather doing his stand-up at the beginning of the war about how we're fighting the awful Russians. They got us going on that. You didn't see that clip.
When was that?
Early in the war.
Yeah.
He brought the flag to Afghanistan, making heroes out of them. Back then, the guys we supported, we gave the most money was to Hekmatyar, who was a drug dealer. We gave him the most amount of aid. Hekmatyar, he's like the killer warlord.
It's so strange. It's so strange how history repeats itself in different forms, just over and over and over again.
In Vietnam, in Laos, there was a whole poppy growth.
Yeah.
And there was CIA shipping out Air America. Remember that movie?
Yeah. Yeah. There was had a guy on who was in denial of this, and I showed him the CIA drug plane that crashed in Mexico with several tons of cocaine in it just a few years ago. I'm like, this is a plane that had been to Guantanamo Bay multiple times. Like, this is still going on. All that shit that happened with Barry Seals and...
Yeah, you're talking about Iran-Contra.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff's still going on.
That's an ugly story.
Yes.
Very ugly. Yeah, the Barry Seal movie was okay.
Oh, the Tom
They
Cruise.
got a piece of it.
Yeah.
But it was uglier than that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were basically, Reagan was selling arms to Iran, taking the cash and splitting it with the Contras.
Yeah.
The Contras were one of the most brutal groups, terrorist groups in Nicaragua. They were killing civilians, blowing up farms, scaring people, and we supported them. We supported a lot of bad guys everywhere in the world.
But it's just that whole idea that you've got to decide. I mean, my life is so heavily affected by drugs, even though I had this whole, I'm not going to do any drugs.
Why did you have that decision?
I don't know. That's always, I've talked about this on my podcast forever. I try
How old are you now?
What's that?
How old are you now?
I'm 64 years old.
And you have no experience with drugs other than
None.
medication,
medication,
surgery. Right?
Sure. I mean, yes, and I've had deep enough injuries that I have
You
experienced.
just keep
morphine.
getting surgery because you love drugs.
Exactly.
It sounds like an excuse.
Well, Trey Parker said that my big flaw was never having been high. So,
We can fix that.
So I know. So he did fix that.
Did he?
I went in for dental surgery, serious dental surgery, and they fucked up. And the dentist told the nurse what he had given me in terms of painkillers, and she took that as what she was supposed to give me. So instantly doubled the dose. And I was so fucking high and out of my mind.
People can die that way.
Yeah. And I told my wife, through my haze of not knowing who I was, call Trey Parker. And Trey came to Vegas and said, I want to sit with Ben High. And
So he flew in immediately while you were fucked up?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. How long did it take him to get to you?
He was planning on being there he came like a day early.
Oh, okay.
So he got there like I was still high, and Trey said, I didn't remember anything, and Trey said the next day, I was right, you should be high.
Well, there's different kinds of highs,
Yeah,
just like there's different kinds of music.
And I was very close to Lou Reed, and I was a very good friend of mine. And Lou said, speaking on behalf of the people of Earth, which I often do, we don't want to see you high, motherfucker. Don't do it. So Lou says no. Trey says yes. What does Joe say?
Well, Joe, this is interesting because I wanted to talk to you about this because we had a conversation a long time ago about this, and you said that, and I'll remember this very clearly. I may paraphrase this, but you said, "I think we've learned all there is to know, and I don't need to do it."
Yes, I said that, and I
Yeah.
was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wrong.
I think you should experience psychedelics because I think psychedelics are a totally different thing. They don't take you.
Well, we know
out.
Sam Harris.
Sure.
And Sam Harris is the one who got me meditating.
Oh, awesome.
Which took him years of arguing with me. And now it's been 3 or 4 years that I have not missed a day. Not missed a day.
You have a problem. Here's one of your problems. You're very intelligent. You're also very large, and you're very articulate. And people like to hear you talk. So you just can talk, and you can take over. You could overrun things, and you can make an argument that people just go, "All right, okay," and they step back. And that's good if you're trying to win an argument. But sometimes it's bad to take in ideas. And I remember when I had that
Perfect.
conversation.
Exactly right.
Thank you. When I had that conversation with you, I remember saying, I'm going to revisit this someday. And one day I want to get Penn fucked up on mushrooms.
Yeah.
That's what I remember thinking. Like it might be a good thing for, well, the best thing for you would be something that doesn't take very long. Just so you can, like DMT is the best one because it takes like 15 minutes and it's over. And then your body brings it back to baseline almost immediately. So you literally travel to another dimension and then you're back and you don't have to worry about any overdosing because it's an endogenous chemical. Your body knows exactly what to do with it. It's one of the quickest chemicals that your body can break down and bring back to baseline.
In my defense, from the very beginning of my not doing drugs, which is an odd kind of baseline there. I always left the door open for psychedelics in the heart. What I disliked the most was wine with dinner.
Really?
I disliked the most social kind of lubrication.
Wine with dinner is amazing.
I'm doing this in past tense. That's where I always was, and I always left open the possibility of some of the more intense stuff.
Wine with dinner is a delicious drug. It's one of the rare delicious drugs. Like, I like whiskey, but let's be honest, it tastes like shit. It's weird. You're drinking this stuff, like, woo! Like, it's got kind of a good flavor, but it's like, it's harsh. You can't drink it. Like, it can't fuck with Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid tastes way better than whiskey, right? Kool-Aid's cheap. You just mix it up. It tastes delicious. It's way better tasting. But wine has a delicious taste that you can enjoy.
Here's my problem. One of my many problems. We'll detail more than one.
Okay.
But I have no skill at moderation. I'm 64 years old, and I've never been able to do anything with moderation. So I think if you told me we're going to do acid for the rest of our lives every single day, you could make that argument. The idea for me that's hard, like I said, when I said I was meditated, I haven't missed a day.
Maybe you should microdose.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
We'd give you a little right now, just a little spray.
You do microdosing sprays.
I got
I'm
one.
not going to do it now.
No?
I want to think about it a little bit before it, although it would be pretty boss.
You tell me when. I'll open the box.
You got the box right
I
there.
got a box right here.
Yeah. So, how often do you? So, I was gonna answer that question. I have a zillion answers to why I've never done drugs, and none of them are, of course, true because we don't have access to that stuff that we really do. But my parents and my whole family in back generations, teetotalers. So there was never alcohol in the house, ever. I never saw my parents take a drink. When it was on TV, it was a totally different thing. It just didn't happen. They never preached about it. They never said don't drink. They never said don't do drugs. It just never was in the house. And that statistically has a huge effect on people. And then the first people I fell madly in love with, Lenny Bruce, Jimi Hendrix, had been, in my mind, killed by drugs. And I kind of said, ooh, people that have this kind of personality, when they get into drugs, they sometimes have trouble. And I think that maybe being 19 years old and trying to get into show business, that maybe being the sober one allowed the dumber guy to do a little better, as everybody else kind of got out of my way, as they were fucked up some of the time, I could get other stuff done. And then that starts reinforcing. But that may no longer be valid.
Look, this guy's name is Dr. Roy
Yeah.
Casagranda.
Okay. And what is his deal?
Pot doesn't work on me.
Oh, right. What kind of pot?
Any
I bet the pot we have will work on you.
up to 50. I've done 55 milligrams edibles.
That's
Nothing.
ridiculously low. I do 200 every time I go to the airport.
Wait, 200 milligrams?
Yes.
Okay, but I'm like
Joey
a quarter
Diaz takes
away.
1,000.
All right, maybe I just haven't upped my game yet.
You can't say pot doesn't work on you.
Okay, but I so far have been unable to respond to THC.
Really?
Yeah.
And smoking it or eating it or both?
Both.
Jamie is with you with the eating. He's got some weird genetic disorder that doesn't work with him.
No.
Like edible, he can take 1,000 edibles and just hang around with people.
Yeah, but so that's a thing. Like people are immune. Some people are immune to
Yes.
THC. It does not.
Some people get withdrawals too. You know, I've talked to people that get actual physical withdrawals from marijuana, and I used to be really skeptical about that. But these are people that I actually trust, and they're like, "Wow, I would," when they would go on tour, like if they have to go places and they didn't have pot, they'd get shaky, they feel weird, and then they realize like, "Oh, this is my body's withdrawing from THC." Apparently, it's very rare, but common enough so that it's in the literature. They've documented people that have like a physical response to withdrawing from marijuana.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more research being done on this stuff. Anyway, like
Yes.
yeah, we're headed there.
Yes.
But then Trump recently said something about trying to
I know.
I'm surprised.
He was comparing the way they handled drug dealers in China with a swift,
Singapore.
fair trial. Yeah. Was he saying Singapore?
No, but
That's how they do
yeah.
it in Singapore. Swift, fair trial, and the death penalty is what he said.
Yeah.
I think
There's a
he's-
resurgence of this in Asia. You see it in the Philippines as well. So
Yes.
Duterte's,
Yes.
has this extrajudicial drug war that he's been launching. So
I understand the concern with the plight. I understand that people are really worried that people getting addicted to drugs ruin their lives. It devastates families, people dying of overdoses from fentanyl and all these different hazards that are associated with drug use and drug dealing. I understand that. But this sort of archaic way of handling it and death penalty talk in 2020.
I know.
Like it's
And one country completely decriminalized all drugs, right? Was it Portugal?
Portugal, yeah. And they had
Some good
spectacular results.
Yeah.
Low everything. Lower incidence of HIV infection, lower drug addiction, lower overdoses, lower everything, lower crime.
Right.
I just don't – it's just messy. It's not – like if there was one thing you could do, like, hey, if we do this thing, then no one gets addicted to drugs and no one dies from overdoses. Well, then you do that thing. But there is
And
no –
that's legalization? That no one would die from overdose if you...
They certainly would, though. People definitely will die of overdoses. If you make drugs legal across the board, the one thing that you do that's good is you stop all the flow of money into illegal drug sales.
Right.
So all the people that are selling drug, or most of it at least, all the cartel money, all that stuff goes away. Because the cartels are making billions and billions of dollars selling to the United States and other countries they can sell to. and they're doing it because it's illegal, because it's a business they can capitalize on that American businesses are not capitalizing on.
And violence goes down too, I'm assuming, right?
Well, they have
related
to.
to crime.
There's a correlation. I mean, if you go back to what happened in the United States during Prohibition, what it did is prop up organized crime. It propped up organized crime in a pretty spectacular way. And it was because there was a massive amount of money to be made selling alcohol. The desire for alcohol didn't go away. The legality of it went away.
Right.
So illegal sales went through the roof, and the people that were selling it were criminals. Wow. So what do you got here for me?
So we were going to talk about, I was really interested to talk to you because we talked last time about my book about depression, Lost Connections. And one of the things that was suggested to me is we talk about the book I wrote about addiction and the war on drugs. And I really...
Was that out last time you came?
Yeah. So that was a book that came out a few years ago. It's just come out in a new edition where there's loads of extra material, particularly about the opioid crisis. And it's interesting because...
So you added to it?
Yeah, loads of new stuff, because that book's about 5 years old now. And although with loads of new stuff now, but... You know, it was something I cared about for this really personal reason, in that one of my earliest memories is of trying to wake up one of my relatives and not being able to. I didn't understand why then, because I was a little boy. But as I got older, I realised we had drug addiction in my family. And it got to the point where I was writing Chasing the Scream, my book about the drug war, I guess I started 8 years ago. And some of the people I love were in a really shitty condition, terrible state. And I was trying to figure out what to do. Nothing I was doing was working. Nothing I was doing was helping. And I decided, right, okay, well, there are lots of people all over the world who are trying to deal with this problem. I want to go and meet with them, talk with them. So I ended up going on this big journey. It took 3 years. I traveled over 30,000 miles. I wanted to sit with, people who'd been through addiction. It actually led to a lot of other aspects of the war on drugs, which I think are as important as what we do about addiction. And I wanted to sit with the places that had the harshest possible policies, like we mentioned Arizona, where I went out with these women who were made to go out on chain gangs and are humiliated and tormented. Vietnam, where they make people with addiction problems go into literally forced labor camps. And the places that had the most compassionate possible policies, like Portugal, where they decriminalised all drugs with incredible results. Switzerland, where they legalised heroin, incredible results. And I guess I ended up just spending so much time with such a crazy mixture of people, from a transgendered crack dealer in Brooklyn who ended up actually being one of the smartest people I know, to a hitman for the deadliest Mexican drug cartel, who's definitely not one of the smartest people I know. And I learned loads of things, but I guess the heart of what I learned is just so much of what we've been told about this for so long. It's now 100 years since we started fighting the war on drugs in this country, and it was then imposed on the rest of the world. So much of what we're told is wrong. Drugs aren't what we think they are. Addiction isn't what we think it is. The war on drugs isn't what we think it is. And the alternatives to the war on drugs aren't what we think they are. So in some ways, it's kind of daunting to go all over the world and realise so much of what we take for granted isn't right, but that opens up this whole exciting other set of possibilities.
The main reason why people assume that people do drugs is to escape reality. What do you think is the primary thing that they're running from?
So you've got to separate out two things. And this surprised me because my family's experience was pretty bad and catastrophic addiction. But most drug use, even the main drug war body in the world, the UN Office of Drug Control, admits that 90% of all currently banned drug use is what they call non-problematic. So the person isn't addicted and it doesn't damage their health, right? So 90%. So let's set that aside. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
There's like 90% that's recreational use, where people use because it makes their lives better.
Right.
Then you've got the
like coffee, sip of wine at work, or
ecstasy, or a whole range of currently cannabis, a whole range of currently illegal drugs. In most cases, there are some people who have addictions to cannabis. But you then got to ask, well, what's happening with this 10% who have got a problem, right? What's going on? And one of the things that really blew my mind in the research for Chasing the Scream was realizing I had deeply misunderstood what addiction is. I had misunderstood the thing I thought I had been seeing in front of me since I was a kid, right? So most people, let's think about heroin addiction because that was close to me. Most people, if we stop the next 20 people to walk past your studio and we said to them, what causes heroin addiction? I think they'd look at us like we were stupid and they'd say, well, the clue's in the name, dipshit, right? Heroin causes heroin addiction. We've been told this story for 100 years. It's become totally part of our common sense, right? We think if we took the next 20 people after that who walked past the studio and we injected them all with heroin every day for a month, At the end of that month, they'd all be heroin addicts for a simple reason. There's chemical hooks in heroin that their bodies would start to desperately physically need. And we think that, a lot of people think that's what addiction is, right? It's this physical hunger for the chemical hook inside the drug, right? There is some reality to chemical hooks. They exist, they're real, but that's actually a very small part of what's going on. The first thing that alerted me to the fact there's something wrong with that story we've been told is when it was explained to me by loads of doctors in Britain, where I'm from. If you step out into the street and you get hit by a truck and you break your hip, you'll be taken to hospital and you'll be given loads of a drug called diamorphine. Diamorphine is heroin, right? It's the medical name for heroin. It's the stuff you'll be given in hospital is much better than the shit you buy on the street because it's medically pure. It's, not contaminated. If what we think about addiction is right, that it's just caused by exposure to the drug, what should be happening to all these people in British hospitals who are being given loads of heroin, right? Anyone watching this podcast who's got a British grandmother who's had a hip replacement operation, your grandmother's taken a shit ton of heroin, right? If what we think is right, that addiction is caused primarily by exposure to the chemical hooks, loads of these people should be leaving hospital and trying to score on the streets, right? This has been studied very carefully. It virtually never happens, right? And when I learned that, it just seemed so weird to me. I thought it couldn't possibly be true, right? How could it be you've got someone in a hospital bed who's taking loads of really potent heroin, they don't become addicted, and in the alleyway outside, you've got someone who's using actually a weaker form of the drug who becomes addicted? How can that be? What's happening here? And I only began to understand it when I went to Vancouver and met this amazing man called Professor Bruce Alexander, who did an experiment that's really transformed how we think about addiction all over the world. It's led to a new way of thinking and loads of new evidence. So Professor Alexander explained to me this story that we've been told, right, that addiction is caused by the chemical hooks primarily, comes from a series of experiments that were done earlier in the 20th century. They're really simple experiments. Your viewers can try them at home if they're feeling a little bit shitty today, right? You take a rat, you put it in a cage, and you give it 2 water bottles. One is just water, and the other is water laced with either heroin or cocaine. You might remember in the 1980s, there's a famous Partnership for Drug-Free America ad that shows this experiment, right? And the rat in this cage starts to drink always prefers the heroin water, and almost always kills itself within a week or two, right? So there you go. That's our story. You're exposed to the drug, it takes you over, and then you just die, right? But in the 70s, Professor Alexander comes along and says he was working with people with addiction problems. And he's like, well, hang on a minute. We put these rats alone in an empty cage. They've got nothing that makes life meaningful for rats, right? What would happen if we did this differently? So he built a cage that he called Rat Park, which is basically like heaven for rats, right? They got loads of friends, they got loads of cheese, they got loads of coloured balls, they can have loads of sex. Anything a rat finds meaningful in life is there in Rat Park. And they've got both the water bottles, the normal water and the drug water, and of course they try both. They don't know what's in them. This is the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, they don't like the water very much. None of them ever use it compulsively.
The heroin water.
Yeah, the heroin water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. So you go from almost 100% compulsive use and death by overdose when their lives are shitty to none when they have the things that make life meaningful. Now, there's loads of human examples I'm sure we'll talk about, but the main thing I took from this is that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. We have to ask ourselves, what are the contexts in which people become addicted? Because there are some contexts where people find these drugs extremely addictive, and there are some contexts where they don't become addicted at all. There's something, the drug plays a role. Chemical hooks are real. I can talk about how we know that. They play some role, but they're actually a surprisingly small role of small amount of what's going on. We know this from, there's so many examples, but I'll give you another one. At the same time as Rat Park, there was an experiment going on that everyone listening to this will have heard of, the Vietnam War, right? In Vietnam, shitloads of American troops were using heroin, right? It was very easy to get it out there. They'd actually, insanely, they had cracked down on cannabis, and so people had moved to heroin because sniffer dogs can't detect heroin as easily as cannabis. So cannabis was everywhere. Heroin was everywhere. Loads of American troops were using it. And if you look at what people said at the time, the authorities, the Nixon White House, they were shitting themselves because they believe this chemical hooks theory of addiction. So they're like, fuck, when this war ends, we're going to have, 500,000 heroin addicts on the streets of the United States. There was a really good study that followed these men home, and it found that the vast majority of them just stopped, right? They didn't go to rehab, most of them. They didn't go into horrific withdrawal. Some of them had an uncomfortable flu-like symptoms, but most of them just stopped. Now, if you believe this old theory that chemical hooks take you over, that makes no sense. But if you understand what Professor Alexander is saying and that all the new evidence about addiction that I go through in Chasing the Scream, it makes perfect sense, right? You, me, everyone in this area, if I took any of us and put us in a horrific pestilential jungle where we don't want to be, and I made you kill a load of people and potentially die at any moment, you would find heroin much more appealing than you do now, right? If we want to understand why people turn to painkillers, we've got to understand why they're in pain, right? And the core of addiction, I learned from these amazing experts all over the world, the core of addiction is about not wanting to be present in your life because your life is too painful a place to be. And once you understand that, you can see why what we've been doing is such a disaster, right? Because the theory we have with the war on drugs, think about Arizona, we can talk about that more, but like I say, I went to this nightmare prison, Estrella prison in Phoenix, Arizona, where people are humiliated. And the theory behind that, part of the theory behind the war on drugs is, if you've got people who are addicted, you've got to inflict pain on them to, give them an incentive to stop, right? But once you understand that pain is in fact the fuel of addiction, is in fact the primary cause of addiction, you can see why sometimes people say that doesn't work. Truth is much worse, right? That makes addiction worse. Those women I went out with and spent all that time with who were, humiliated. I remember in that prison, we come back from being on the chain gang where sometimes they have to dig graves. They weren't doing that the day I was there. They had to collect garbage one of the days I was there. But we come back, and normally with prisons, as a journalist, they don't want to show you anything, right? You have to kind of really finagle to get them to show you anything. In this prison, it's like a pantomime of cruelty. They want to show it to you. The whole point is to humiliate these people, right? So the women I'd been talking to and the men were really terrified of what they called the hole, right? It's the solitary block. And so I said to the guards, will you show me the hole? I was sure they'd say no. They're like, yeah, sure, come on, we'll show you. So we go around to the hole, and these women who put there for the most trivial infractions, like having a cigarette, it's literally a hole, right? It's like a concrete block. You're on your own. There's nothing in it. There's a tiny window where you can see sunlight. No TV, nothing. And I remember speaking to a woman who was in this and suddenly thinking, this is the closest you could get to an exact human recreation of the cages that guaranteed addiction in rats, right? And this is what we're doing, thinking it will stop these women being addicted. It's the system we've built. Dr. Gabor Mate, an amazing guy, said to me, if negative consequences stopped addiction, there wouldn't be a single addict in the world, right? What have people with addiction problems not suffered? What humiliation have they not endured? So we've got this... I think we've got to really shift our perspective on what addiction is, and there are places that have done this that have led to incredible results.
I love that rat experiment one, because that had always been parroted as this is the proof positive that these drugs are so terrible for you. But once they figured out that if you take those rats and put them in a wonderful place and they don't have addiction, it really does make you step back and go, okay, what is exactly going on here? Obviously, there's chemical hooks. They are real. Like people that are on sustained, prolonged use of opiates, especially people with back injuries, have an incredibly difficult time kicking them. Even really positive people who don't necessarily have awful lives. But it's one of those things that gets in your head and then you sort of parrot it. You've heard it, you repeat it. But it's the reason why I asked you the question. It's like what is the cause? For most people, you believe it's an unfulfilled life or a painful life or a painful self-image or remorse for your past, or like what is it? Do we have like primary reasons or primary attributes that we attach to these people that are drug addicted?
Yeah, so this was what my more recent book, which is called Lost Connections, Uncovering the Real Causes of Depression and the Unexpected Solutions is about. Because I think the core of addiction is about trying to deal with pain.
Right.
But the causes of human pain are obviously huge. But what I learned is there's scientific evidence for 9 causes of kind of deep despair, right?
Okay.
Now, if you think about depression, and very similar factors play out with addiction, they're actually densely interconnected phenomena. But there are real biological factors, right? Your genes can make you more vulnerable to that, just like some people find it easier to put on weight than others. And there are real brain changes that happen when you become depressed or addicted that can make it harder to get out, right? But most of the factors that are causing this despair are not factors in our biology, they're factors in the way we live. I think it's a kind of, this doesn't cover all of the causes that I learned about for Lost Connections, but it covers a lot of them. Everyone watching your show knows they have natural physical needs, obviously, right? You need food, you need water, you need shelter, you need clean air. Exactly. If I took those things away from you, you'd be fucked really quickly, right? But there's equally strong evidence that all human beings have natural psychological needs, right? You need to feel you belong. You need to feel your life has meaning and purpose. You need to feel that people see you and value you. You need to feel you've got a future that makes sense. And this culture we've built is good at lots of things, and I'm really glad to be alive today for all sorts of reasons. I had to go to the dentist the other day. I'm glad to be alive now, not like 100 years ago. But there's a lot of evidence that we've been getting less and less good at meeting these deep underlying psychological needs.
Crazy. I mean, in retrospect, imagine let's do a little ranking thing here. We have 3 vices, and I know exactly where you're going to be going with this, but we have 3 things we want to prioritize: dope, alcohol, smoking, right? Cigarettes. You can ban 1. Or actually, rank them in order. We can start from scratch. I'm saying, Joe, we're starting over.
Okay.
What you say goes. Rank so right now, the way we have dealt with these is smoking is becoming the most taboo of those 3. Cigarettes. Mm-hmm. Marijuana second, and alcohol is the one that we have the least inhibitions about, right? My argument would be that that list is exactly backwards. That it should be, alcohol should be the most taboo. Marijuana should be, actually not exactly backwards. It should be alcohol the most taboo, cigarettes the second most, marijuana the third. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So but basically we have it completely upside down.
But I think for some people, like, look, there's obviously terrible things that happen to you when you smoke cigarettes. Mm. But every time?
No.
Is it I see, I've smoked a cigarette or 2 before shows. Like I've smoked or 2. I've never smoked 2 in a row, but I've smoked a cigarette before I've done shows. Like Dave Chappelle gave me one of his cigarettes recently. Tony Hinchcliffe's given me a cigarette. I'm not a cigarette smoker, but there's something cool about the head rush that you get when you smoke a cigarette. I hesitate to say that. And this is a person who's done a lot of drugs. I've done a lot. I've smoked a lot of pot, and I've done psychedelics, and I talk about them openly. I have hesitation about telling people that I've enjoyed a cigarette.
Why?
Because I think it's so bad for you. It's. I think when I talk about doing mushrooms, I think mushrooms are good for you. I think it makes you freak out. I think it illuminates parts of your consciousness that I think a lot of people guard and protect and shield. And I think sometimes doing something that breaks down those walls is good for you ultimately overall. There's a little bit of an adjustment period, but I think you learn something about the normal state of consciousness. I don't think you learn much when you smoke cigarettes. I just think there's just a little bit of a head rush that you get out of it. But I know so many people that are sick from cigarettes, so many people that can't quit them, so many people that have died from cancer. I mean, I personally have known several people that have died from cancer from smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
So I hesitate in saying it, but I don't want to be dishonest. I've had them.
Yeah.
I don't smoke cigarettes, though. I've never bought a pack. That's a cigar. I've smoked cigars. I like them sometimes. I just think it's a terrible thing to get hooked on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I would say the same thing with alcohol. I know people that have had real problems with alcohol that have been alcoholics, and they have to go to meetings, and they're on 12-step programs, and I would never offer them a drink. But if you said, hey, let's do a shot right now, let's celebrate, this is a wonderful conversation, let's have a glass of whiskey, I can have a glass of whiskey and not drink again. It doesn't bother me. I don't have that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But some people do.
Yeah.
I hesitate in glorifying that too.
Yeah.
And for young people, it scares the shit out of me. If I probably drank for the first time when I was probably like I was in high school. I think it was probably 14 or 15. First time I ever got drunk with my friends. We
Yeah.
got a hold of some Jack Daniels or something, and it made me throw up
It's
every
the
time I
Irish
smelled
legal
it.
drinking age.
Yes.
in
Well,
Boston.
it's just friends, listening to
Yeah.
classic rock and getting drunk in Boston. But it's something I occasionally enjoy. I enjoy alcohol. I like having a drink of wine with a glass of wine with a meal. I like having a drink with friends occasionally. But I don't have a problem with it, and I know people who do. And so I feel weird talking about it, knowing those people that do have a problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
With pot, though, the people that have a problem with pot, it's rare. And it's usually people that have some sort of and I do believe there is an issue with people who have some sort of an underlying schizophrenic issue that could come from especially high doses. If they smoke a lot of pot in one night, they can have a schizophrenic episode. I've actually seen it, particularly from edibles. I've seen it. But that's, to me, that's absolutely the least taboo. And I think there's a lot of benefits to pot. I think pot makes you more sociable. I think it makes you friendlier. I mean, some people get paranoid from it, but I think that's what that really is marijuana illuminating how vulnerable you actually are.
Yeah.
That we sort of protect ourselves from this overwhelming existential angst that you get when you get high on pot.
Yeah.
And people say, I don't like it. It makes me paranoid. Well, the reality is, you're vulnerable. We're all very, very, very vulnerable. And we just somehow or another make it to, like, how old are you?
56.
I'm 52. We made it. We made it to this age somehow or another, despite all the paranoia. We got here. But we don't have to. I mean, it's like really, life is crazy. We're in these metal boxes with combustion engines, like trusting the people next to us going 60 miles an hour, paying attention, not looking at their phone. It's like, it's very life, and then we get in planes, and who knows what the fuck's going on with the engine. This guy's flying it over the sky. We're very vulnerable all the time.
Yeah.
There's diseases, and not to mention, war and all sorts of other things that could.
Well, we're in LA, not
Yeah.
to mention
everything, earthquakes,
fire. Yeah.
yeah,
Earthquake.
fires, yes,
No, my thing on this is simply the collateral damage.
yeah,
So leave the individual out of it and ask how much social damage is caused by any of those things. And,
Okay.
and alcohol in that case.
Number one.
Just by,
Yeah,
far,
by
far
a
away.
bullet. Yeah, you
And
don't
they
get.
you know what's amazing to me is how the people who make alcohol get a free ride. It's incredible to me that, like, if I said to you that I was on the board of Philip Morris, you would say, Malcolm, that's pretty screwed up.
Yeah.
And you'd have a problem with it. If I said that, I'm on the board of Anheuser-Busch, you probably would hit me up for tickets to the Super Bowl. Right? It's just
yeah.
not the same. Whereas there's no, in terms of the amount of social damage, what Anheuser-Busch has created has produced 100 times the social damage than what Philip Morris has produced.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
sure.
So it's like, I've always puzzled about it. I don't know how we got it in our heads, like, to treat one like it's completely taboo, and the other we kind of shrug. There are a bunch. I was reading about this recently. How many colleges not just accept alcohol advertising and sponsorship, but you go to a college football game and Bud Light will be an active sponsor of the event. Will have some huge relationship with the school. This is crazy. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's like this is the drug that is causing so many problems for young people, particularly on campuses.
Sure.
And the schools are hand in glove with the manufacturers of it
Because it's socially acceptable. Because they don't have to worry about repercussions.
because we give it a
Yeah.
like in a way that they would never have
Marlboro.
Marlboro.
Yeah,
right? That would
no
be
way.
oh my god, people would pick it.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not. I don't know.
That's true.
It's a strange kind of.
We're so messy. People are so messy, and that's a very good example of how messy we are.
The sad thing is that the opioid epidemic was so often started by people who were prescribed drugs from their doctors. And so that's another thing. There's a sea change happening right now, is that there's all these new regulations about what doctors are allowed to prescribe. They're trying to discourage them from from prescribing opioids. And that's a positive shift, I think, for people who are new patients, right? So like if you get a root canal, you don't need some crazy strong opioid, or to recover, like from a dental procedure or whatever. But the problem is that now they're starting to take away people's opioids when they've been on them for a long term. Like I talked to this woman from Colorado, and she had a disease, I can't remember, rheumatoid arthritis or something. She'd been taking opioids for years and years and years. And now all of a sudden, the doctor was like, I can't give you these anymore. You have to take these classes about alternatives to opioids, and they talked about acupuncture and yoga and stuff like that. And all that's great, but she felt like just degraded, and studies have shown that people, if they get their opioid pills taken away, they're going to turn to street heroin as a result. And so the whole thing is insanely complicated.
Yeah, you talked about that there's 3 waves, right? The first wave is the pills, second wave is street heroin, and then third wave is fentanyl.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're still facing the repercussions from the first one, and that's what all these lawsuits that you hear about in the news are all about. And another scary thing is that up until now, people hadn't been asking for fentanyl by name. Like we said, it's just put in other drugs. But now in places like San Francisco, even St. Louis, fentanyl is starting to acquire a reputation as a street drug because longtime heroin addicts don't get high anymore. You know what I mean? They take heroin and it just gets rid of their withdrawal symptoms. And so fentanyl will get them high again. And so people are starting to seek it out.
Teenager called Lisa, who was like, they looked really similar. They shared a fake ID. They were like sisters. And one day when they were in their late teens, they went to Ocean City for a day out. And Lisa decided to hitchhike back to New Jersey where she lived. And so Lisa said bye to her. And the next day she gets a call saying Lisa had not arrived. So she waits and waits. She has this terrible summer waiting to find out what happened. And then they discover that Lisa had been gang raped and murdered. Her body was found underneath a house where it had been eaten by animals. And Lee became convinced at that time that Lisa had, for various reasons, that Lisa had been killed as part of a gang initiation ceremony. She's like, I'm going to destroy these gangs. I'm going to dedicate my life to destroying these gangs. She goes and applies to become a police officer. And for years, she's this hardline cop, right? Takes real pleasure in busting people. But Lee started to notice a few things. First thing was, when you're a cop and you arrest a rapist, there are fewer rapes in your town the next week, right? When you are a cop and you bust a pedophile, fewer children get sexually abused. But she notices when you bust a dealer, there's no fewer dealers. There's someone on the corner the next day for sure, right? It didn't seem to be having any effect. In fact, what she discovered, what she began to learn about this was that there was something even worse, which was, for a funny sort of reason, that she realized that she was actually creating these, empowering these gangs. So the best way to explain this is, if you imagine, obviously when you ban drugs, they don't disappear, right? They're transferred from the people who used to control them, licensed legal businesses, to armed criminal gangs, right? And these armed criminal gangs operate in a different way to legal businesses. So if you imagine, if you and me decided we want to go and steal now a bottle of vodka, right? We go into a local liquor store and that store catches us. They'll call the cops will come and take us away. That liquor store doesn't need to be violent, it doesn't need to be intimidating. They've got the power of the law to uphold their property rights. Okay, now imagine we wanted to steal a bag of Coke, right? If we go to the guy near here, I'm sure there is someone who sells Coke, and he catches us, he can't call the cops, obviously. Cops would arrest him. He has to fight us. Now, if you're a dealer, you don't want to be having a fight every day, right? You want to establish a reputation for being so frightening that no one will dare to fuck with you, right? So you establish your place in that neighborhood through aggression, through violence, and you maintain it through aggression and violence, right? Legal businesses compete on cost and quality of product. In illegal markets, people compete on how much of a frightening fucker you're prepared to be, right? As a writer called Charles Bowden put it, the war on drugs creates a war for drugs, right? It transfers it to these criminal gangs who have to operate through violence to protect their property rights. So Lee goes into the drug war thinking, I'm the one stopping these gangs. She realizes, shit, I'm the one enabling them, right? They control one of the biggest industries in the world because of this police action and because of this decision to prohibit these drugs. And if you want to know how much of this violence is caused by the fact that we prohibited it, just ask yourself, where are the violent alcohol dealers, right? Everyone knows who Al Capone was. Does the head of Smirnoff go and shoot the head of Budweiser in the face, right? Does your local bar go and send a bunch of kids to go and shoot everyone in the next bar down? Of course not. Exactly that happened under alcohol prohibition. When did it end? It ended on the day alcohol prohibition ended, because legal markets don't compete with that. So Lee's partly having this insight, right? She's realizing, shit, I think I'm taking down these gangs, I'm actually empowering them. What will really disempower them is reclaiming the market and making it legal. But she also has another really painful realization. So early in her career as a cop, Lee had done this really brave thing. She'd gone undercover with the Klan to expose them. She'd done a really important work in breaking up parts of the Maryland Klan. She really was not a racist, right? She'd had relationships with African-American men. But she noticed something that most honest cops notice, which is the vast majority of people, they were sent to African-American areas to enforce the drug laws, right? One of her colleagues, Matthew Fogg, once went to his superior officer and said, you know, this is a bit weird, right? We only ever seem to go to African-American neighborhoods to do all our drug busts. I'm fairly sure white people sometimes use drugs. Should we go to like a white neighborhood as well? And the supervisor said, of course you're right, white people use drugs. But white people know journalists and lawyers and judges. That's just a whole load of shit for us. Just go for the low-hanging fruit. So Lee, who is not a racist, could see the effect of what she was doing was in fact racist, right? And she was very uncomfortable with that. And this really came to a head for Lee when Lee's police partner was a guy called Ed Totley, who she loved, platonically loved. He was a great champion of women police officers. He was a great guy. And one day she gets a call at home. Ed had been sent on a drug bust. He was undercover. And the guy had thought he was ripping him off and shot him in the head. And Lee goes to see Ed's body and she's like, what did he die for? Right? There are no fewer drug dealers. Every time we arrest a drug dealer, the supply of drugs is not disrupted for 1 hour. We are enforcing a racist war. We are empowering these gangs. Why are we doing this? So Lee quit as a police officer. She retrained as a lawyer. She now gets the criminal records expunged whenever she can of the kind of people that she busted when she was a cop. And she was part of a brilliant group called Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, who are cops who argue for ending the drug war. But it's interesting to me because it's hard to be Lee was trying to be Harry Anslinger. It's hard to be Harry Anslinger if you're an honest person with a conscience, right? And there are police officers all over the country who are making these realizations now. And that, obviously, it's very close to my heart what we do to people with addiction problems. But horrific and catastrophic though that is, I don't actually think that's the biggest moral issue around the war on drugs. The biggest moral issue is the violence created by prohibition. Right? If I think about places I've spent time like Colombia, Ciudad Juarez in northern Mexico, that's the biggest issue, right? More people have died in Latin America, Central and South America, in the drug war violence than have died in Syria, right? I don't know what we can do about Syria. We can end this violence. There's a professor at Harvard called Jeffrey Myron, who I interviewed, who has a graph of the murder rate in the 20th century in the United States. Massively shoots up the day alcohol is banned and falls like a stone the day alcohol is legalized, right? And massively rises again when there's an intensification of the drug war later. We can end a huge amount of this violence, right? We can do what Switzerland did. We can do what's happening here.
So what's stopping us?
So I think the main thing...
Because this is a logical conclusion based on facts and based on cases like Portugal and Switzerland. I mean, there's obviously data. So people are aware of this. So people must be confronted with this data. To this day, people know that the prohibition on alcohol was a massive disaster and no one would ever accept it again. We're slowly starting to realize that marijuana, at least for some people, is safe and reasonable and should be used recreationally and has some massive benefits medically. So we're starting to see legalization both for recreational use and clearly for medical use is spread. I think... What did we decide? What was it? I think it's like there's a certain amount of states where it's just fully legal recreationally and more where it's medical, But I think it's more than 18 states total now.
Yeah, soon we're going to be half of the American population.
It should
will
be
live in a state where
100%,
yeah, of
right?
course,
I mean,
of course.
we all.
And it is in Canada.
And it should be. Yes, it is in Canada, as it should be for alcohol. But what is the stop? What is the wall between this and legalization of all these other drugs and counseling and implementing some sort of a Switzerland-like program?
I think you've gone to the really important question. So there's a range of things.
Is public perception a big one?
I think you've gone to the most important, right? So some people say it's the vested financial interest in the existing system. That's true. If you look at who funds the no campaigns whenever they want to legalize marijuana, you can see the interests, right? Prison guard unions, alcohol companies, because they don't want a commercial competitor, religious fundamentalist groups like Mormons, not that all Mormons are fundamentalists, but the groups that funding this are. So it's partly that, but I think you're right. I don't think that's the main thing that's going on. It's significant and real, but I don't think it's the main thing that's going on. The main block is huge majorities of Americans, more than 80%, say the war on drugs has failed and been a disaster. And yet most people are afraid of the alternatives, right? And so I think there's two things going on. There's ignorance about what the alternatives actually mean. So one of the reasons why Chase and Scream is written as I went to all these places, from the killing fields in northern Mexico to Switzerland, is because way too often in this debate, we talk like we're a philosophy seminar. People go, well, what would legalization mean? How would it work? And they go into this weird, abstract conversation. I'm like, fuck that. Here's a plane ticket to Geneva. Here's a plane ticket to Lisbon. Here's a plane ticket to Colorado, right? It's not rocket science, right? I've been to the places that have tried these things. We can see the results, right? Then they're not, legalization is not an or decriminalization, I can explain the difference if you want, are not abstract questions.
What's the key differences between legalization and decriminalization?
So decriminalization is where you stop punishing users, but they still have to go to armed criminal gangs to get their drug. Legalization is where you open up some legal route for people to get their drugs, and that varies according to the drug, right? So I guess the kind of headline would be decriminalization shuts down Orange is the New Black, and legalization shuts down Breaking Bad and Narcos, right? And of course we need to do both, right? We need to decriminalize use and legalize supply.
Now, on the subject of drugs, marijuana is obviously a big issue in this country, and we've seen many states make it recreational, including this one. What do you think could be done, and what should be done to have this across the board, especially federally? You know, there's a guy that I have on the podcast coming up soon. His name's John Norris, and he wrote a book on the cartels growing marijuana illegally all over this country and selling it, particularly in California now, because it's a misdemeanor, because it's legal recreationally, and selling it with all sorts of horrible pesticides on it, all sorts of very, in fact, deadly chemicals. All of this because it's not federally legal, because we can't have sanctioned, licensed companies doing an ethical job of growing something that any responsible, law-abiding person should be able to consume.
Okay. Let me say this. When I ran for president for the Democratic nomination in 2016, I talked about a broken criminal justice system, which ends up having in the United States more people in jail than any other country. We have more people in jail than China does, which is a communist authoritarian country. And what I called for then and I call for now is the legalization of marijuana in America. Right now, you have a federal law. It's called the Controlled Substance Act. Here's heroin, here is marijuana. They're at the same level. That is insane. Heroin is a killer drug. You can argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but marijuana ain't heroin. So we have to end that, and that's what I will do. As President of the United States, I believe we can do that through executive order, and I will do that. Second of all, what we have now is a number of states, and I'm very proud. I talked about during 2016 what seemed kind of radical, the need to legalize and decriminalize marijuana, a very radical idea 4 years ago. It is spreading all over the country. And by the way, it blows my mind to drive through Nevada, I think here even in California, now you see signs. Corporations buy our marijuana.
Yeah.
And 4 years ago, people getting arrested for doing that, right? Their lives being destroyed.
Well, particularly in Nevada, there was life sentences given out in the 70s.
Can you believe that? And now you have corporations selling the damn product that people went to jail for. So I think ultimately, we've got to legalize marijuana. And what's good news, in a sense, is some communities, some cities are expunging the records. So if you were arrested, have a criminal record for selling marijuana, that is being expunged, and that is the right thing to do. You know, we can argue about the pluses and minuses. I'm not a great fan of drugs. Other people, you know, I smoked marijuana a couple of times. Didn't do much for me. Other people, I guess, have different impacts.
Just a couple times?
That's real, true.
It didn't do much for you?
Yeah, it made me cough.
Where were you getting it?
I don't know. I was in Vermont, northern Vermont.
Oh, that's the problem.
Maybe.
You gotta get it from here. It'll do something for you.
Well, it made me cough a whole lot. All right, but I gather other people have had different experiences,
Oh,
correct?
for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I certainly have. The other problem is, of course, with illegal drugs comes you get this horrible cycle, particularly in inner cities, where you have people that are incarcerated for illegal drugs. Illegal drugs seem to be the only way out. The hard drugs, when we're talking about cocaine and all these other drugs, how does one stop that? And would you ever consider legalizing all drugs or decriminalizing all drugs?
Not at this point. No, I wouldn't. But you're touching on a real tragedy.
Yes.
And when we talk about criminal justice in America, we have over 2 million people in jail. They are disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native American. And here's what I think. I think in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, what we have got to do, instead of building more jails and locking up more people, we really do have to invest in our young people, especially young people in distressed communities. What does that mean? If we can, and we can do this with the proper amount of resources, make sure the kids are not dropping out of school. If you drop out of school today, you know, say you drop out in your second or third year of high school, you don't have an education, you don't have any job skills, what are you going to do with your life? And the answer is you may well do drugs, you know, or you'll get in trouble, self-destructive activity or destructive activity, you're going to end up in jail. It makes so much more sense from a humane perspective, protecting our people, as well as a financial situation. We're spending $80 billion a year to invest in these kids. What does it mean? It means making sure they get the education that they need, paying attention, having good schools, making sure that they get the jobs that are out there, doing job training. There was a principal in a school in southern Vermont. I'll never forget what she said. It was a working class school. And she said, Bernie, I love these kids. I am not going to let them drop out. And she had a mentoring program, just watching the kids who are mostly at risk so that they would not end up going through the cracks and getting into trouble. That's what we should be doing as a nation. And when we do that, we invest in the kids, we get them jobs, we get them education. The likelihood of them falling into bad ways is significantly reduced.
All those things sound great. The uncomfortable reality about drugs, though, is that when drugs are illegal, criminals sell them. And there's obviously a need for drugs in terms of, not necessarily a need, but a demand for drugs. There's a demand for drugs in this country that's absolutely fueling Mexican cartels and illegal drug runners inside this country. I mean, there's a lot of that. How do you curb that if drugs are illegal?
Well, you're raising a deep question.
Yes.
All right. So the question essentially that you're asking is, what is the cause of the opioid epidemic? Yes.
That's one aspect
Heroin.
of it. But the opioid epidemic is interesting because there's so much of it that's coming legally.
Right.
That's not the drug cartels. That's the pharmaceutical industry.
You're right. But the heroin is illegal.
Yes.
All right. Now you're asking, this is a very, very deep question, which we don't talk about terribly much. Why is it that so many of our people are turning to drugs, to alcohol, by the way? And I don't mean a drink a night, but I mean serious alcohol problems, and tragically to suicide. We now have, for the last 3 years, something that is ahistorical, never happened before in modern history, and that is our life expectancy is actually going down. And this is hitting all over the country, but it's especially hitting rural areas. And what the doctors are saying is that these are diseases of despair. Despair. So you're in West Virginia, you're in rural Ohio, or any place, Vermont, any place. And the job you used to have earning a decent living is now in China. Your kid can't afford to go to college. Maybe you can't afford health care. You got nothing to look forward to. Under that scenario, alcohol becomes a way out. And the worst case is suicide. So I think what we're talking about is, why is this happening, often in rural areas, in urban as well? And how can we how can we reestablish hope and optimism in the American people? And that gets back to a whole lot of other issues. It means if people have health care as a right, that will certainly play a role in this thing. They walk into the doctor when they need. But it also means that people need decent jobs that pay them a living wage. That means we have to rebuild rural America. We have to rebuild the depressed communities in urban America. It means that we have to have a great educational system. And people say, oh, that's great, Bernie, that's utopian. It is not utopian. This is something that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world we can afford, and we should be doing rather than creating a situation where Amazon pays zero in federal income taxes. So to answer your question, this is a deep question. And again, I'm not here to tell you I have all the answers. But there are a lot of people out there who have basically given up hope. And for those people, I guess drugs is the alternative.
So what you're saying essentially is that if we can do something to mitigate despair, then we'll do something to at least stop some of the demand for these illegal drugs.
I believe that is the case. Look, if I am optimistic, if I'm excited about going to work tomorrow and I'm seeing my kid doing great in school, and, when I get sick, I can go to the doctor's office and I have a sense of community. My downtown is not all boarded up because businesses have left. But we have a community. Yeah, the strong likelihood is there will be less diseases of despair and drugs than we currently see.